My name's Andy Rumming, and I'm a farmer and butcher from Waterhay Farm in Wiltshire in England. So that's in kind of central England, kind of the top of the southwest area. And I'm hoping today to give you a little talk about our farm, our business, and the different enterprises that we've got sort of linked in on that, and how we've moved from a conventional farm, pretty conventional, to a more regenerative farm, so sort of taking that kind of regenerative journey. I want to start with the first half by kind of talking about some of those different enterprises, a few stories about how we got there, how those things happened. And then on the second half, I really want to have a chat about about some analysis, some tools you can use, and things like that. So we'll start off. I'm 47. I've got a degree in agriculture from Reading. And I worked actually for the Department of Agriculture in England for 20 years. Start with full-time and then for quite a long time part-time, working really on diversification and helping farmers do new things on their farm to add value and things like that. And that was really good. I got out into a lot of farms, saw a lot of people doing some really good things, some people with some great ideas, some people with some absolutely rubbish ideas, and then quite a lot in the meat industry, so abattoir redevelopments and all sorts of things. And so that was really good, but I gave that up a couple of years ago and really to just concentrate on the farm. So I came back to the family farms 13 years ago and started a butchery business, and then have kind of done more and more on the farm. So I'm really kind of passionate about being outdoors, about wildlife, and about sort of farming that I enjoy. When I grew up, my dad was a small dairy farm, and I found it really difficult to be passionate about that, really, because all I saw was that he was really, really tired all the time. We weren't making any money, big overdraft, and I didn't really want to do that. So I wanted to do a degree in agriculture to find a bit of agriculture that I did want to do. So let's move on with the slides. Okay. Right to progress the slides? Okay. That's all right. Yeah, no, it was working fine. That's right, no worries. Anyway, we'll carry on, not a problem. So the first slide shows myself and my brother. And so my brother's about 18 months younger than me. And we work really well together. I kind of cover the cows and the butchery side of it, and he's quite focused on the turkeys and the young stock. Our farm is a total of 150 hectares in 2 blocks of land. We've got 6 partners in our business. So there's me, my brother, my mum and dad, my aunt and the uncle. Some would argue that's like 5 partners too many, but that's how it is. And so we've got to make that work. And when I came back home, there was absolutely no option of me coming home and drawing a livable wage. And so I had to sort of start enterprises in my spare time from my main work and kind of build those up. And then about 4 years ago, I put them into the family partnership in order to kind of lever some equity and get a place in that partnership. So so that's okay, lovely. A bit about So there's brother on the left, and there's me on the right. And so it's really good to have a second person who kind of shares your vision, and that vision is about wildlife. It is about trying to farm with as few chemicals and inputs as possible, but it's also about making some money. So we both quite like money, and we're not really prepared to do it for nothing. So we really, we get fired up by a sale and but people wanting our products. And I hope in this little presentation I can kind of get across some of that sort of passion for the environment, but also passion for like commerce. So no, this is just us stood in our pop-up shop when we were doing a farmer event. And we do quite a lot of farmer events, which is quite good. So, right, so this is what it's like at home. When I took that ride on the bus this morning, like, it's like green grass. There's people making silage yesterday on the way from the airport. And there's, so this is what our place looks like yesterday. So we've got all of my cattle on a bale pod at the moment. So we're rolling out. My daughter has just reported back that she's rolled out 2 bales. And so, 90% of the requirement of this bunch is from round bales rolled out. Which is slightly worrying, but that's how it's been. So between March and 10 days ago, we had under 20% of the rain we would expect. So it's been pretty tricky. So all of our 150 hectares, it's virtually all permanent pasture. We've got a small amount of herbal lay at my brother's. And then we do quite a lot of off-site haymaking. So in our local area, we have got a lot of floodplain meadows. So this is our farm now in the summer, and this is our farm in the winter. In fact, same child in the back of the canoe on this one. If you look really carefully in the picture, you will see that my cows are the wrong side of the flood, but that's okay. The calves can swim. We extracted them. So we're in this interesting area where increasingly we're having sort of dry summers and we're having really wet winters. And in about a third of our farm will go underwater at some point in the winter, some of it up to 1 metre deep. And we've got a really nice figure-of-8 canoe trip around the farm, crossing 2 roads, taking in a bit of the river. And so, like, when you get big floods, you can either sit inside and get really grumpy and annoyed, or you can get out and enjoy it, see the birds. So, it's an interesting area. So we're on the Thames floodplain for about a third of the farm. So we're about 9 miles from the source of the Thames. And then, so this is gravel, decent soil over gravel. Gravel's about 60 centimetres down. And then the rest of our farm is heavy clay. So in a really good year with enough rain, we can grow loads of grass. So we can do 4 rotations. And this, in the past, this whole area was a big dairy area. Supplying cheese and milk into London on the train. When my dad grew up here, there were 25 dairy herds in the parish, and now we're down to 2, and one of those is about to close. So we've seen huge sort of structural change in our agricultural industry in my local area. So the biggest industry now in our local area is horses and gravel. So behind those trees in the background there are Europe's largest area of man-made lakes. So we have hundreds of gravel pits and concrete block processing plants. And so it's a huge industry. What this has left behind is loads of gravel pits. Now, there's probably about 50 that are used for fishing, but there's lots used for nature reserves. And we're lucky all the ones near us are nature reserves, which means that we've now got breeding marsh harrier, breeding bittern. We've got unbelievable amount of bird life. And so running a what I call agroecological farm next to those areas means that, we have phenomenal number of birds. So in any one year, I would hope to count about 120 different species. So it's a really interesting place. So I love the area I'm from and the land that we've got, and I see loads of opportunities, but they might not necessarily be conventional opportunities. So cows. So cows are kind of the foundation of our business, always have been. And as I said, we can grow a lot of grass if the weather plays ball. It fits in with our family's expertise. So my grandfather, my uncle, my dad, they were all keeping dairy cows. My grandfather basically bought and sold dairy cows his whole life. And so, we've got the facilities. And so I'm interested in what we can do with a cow and people talk about pigs, that you can sell everything but the squeak. Well, I think you can do everything. You can do exactly the same thing with cows. It's just that lots of people don't perhaps think far enough. So I'm interested in how many products we can make from those cows. Lots of my neighbours are into solar parks, filling their sheds with caravans, but I want complementary enterprises that I'm actually interested in, that fit together, that not only I can get excited about, but other people can get interested, and that give kind of a range of options. I want my kids to kind of look at the farm as kind of a palette for them to do stuff on. So the more different things I can show them that's possible, something might catch their eye. So a bit about the cows. We have 2 suckler herds, each of about 40, 45. The first lot actually calve in March, April, and they calve sort of mainly indoors. And then the second lot calve in August and, July, August. I've got 3 left to calve, which I hope don't calve actually while I'm away. And so we're using quite a lot of stabiliser genetics. I'm a Pasture for Life member. I'm very keen on Pasture for Life, which is the sort of UK-wide sort of grass-fed association. Lots of the other members are quite into native breeds, but for us, I find that the stabiliser genetics, we're using some Feps and Angus genetics as well, are leading to a cow, which basically I want hands-off cows. So we don't want to do any foot trimming, we don't want to deal with horns, we don't want to do any carving, and we're finding that this is giving us cows that don't need a lot of assistance, but are really productive. And we're very interested in the kind of efficiency of production. We're not organic, even though we effectively farm organically. And we're not registered organic because at the moment we sell our meat direct and our other products, and we don't feel we need to be organic. Also, some family members are not convinced by organics, should I say. We've got a couple of big organic farmers in the local area who bring in huge amounts of organic feed from all over the place, and are pretty intensive, which is interesting. Anyway, so as I said, we're not after our genetics. We're not after using top 5% bulls. We're after using bulls that are cost effective, often proven. I buy a lot of other people's stock bulls. And we also are in a TB hotspot. So I can't really ever justify spending more than perhaps £3,000 on a bull, because there's always the case we might lose it. So the TB thing can be a bit tricky, but we're now in a situation where we can move all our animals between the holdings, and we're on 1-year testing, which is good. We also focus on, rather than focusing on trying to hope that your best cows give a heifer, I focus a lot on taking out the bottom, so culling out cows rather than sort of fingers crossed about the top ones, and we found that's made a lot of progress. And so the cows are weighing about 700 kilos. I'd like them a little bit smaller. The calves are weaning at 330 kilos. The stabilizers ones are really consistent, which are really good. Anything that is not PD'd in calf or doesn't have a calf goes. We only select our heifers from the ones that are born in the first 3 weeks, and that's about it. So we've got really, 2 or 3 rules, and that's seen dramatic genetic improvement and dramatic reduction in labour over the years, over probably about 7 or 8 years now. And as I said, we're not feeding any concentrates. So this is kind of a bit of a list of our kind of enterprises on the farm. And so when I came back to the farm, we had basically one enterprise, which was beef sucklers selling heavy stores. And And now, so we've got Christmas turkeys. So we do between 500 and 600 Christmas turkeys. We take money for agri-environment work, which we had a very good year last year in terms of government payments, and we're now seeing those rapidly drop. And I think, well, we're in a 5-year scheme. We've got 3 years left. I think it's not quite sure where that's going. So we've got to make our other enterprises work a bit harder. I've got the forage production as an enterprise. I always think of that as an enterprise because we make a lot of hay on nature reserves. And some of those nature reserves we get paid for what we call vegetation clearance, but you and me would call it haymaking. So some of that haymaking is actually a kind of a profit centre. And we're actually picking up a bit more of that. And in our area of the world, there's a lack of farmers who really want to work properly with wildlife organisations. And so it's not just a case of turning up, cutting it. It's about talking to them sometimes for a year beforehand about cutting dates, what their priorities are, size of equipment, access, insurance, public safety. And it sounds a lot of hassle, but actually, once it beds in, and so we're getting paid £20 a round bale on some of it, which is great. So at my brother's place, we're not using any straw at all now. We're using low quality hay to do all the bedding, which is great. Obviously, we've got suckler cows, which we have I kind of calculate as a separate enterprise, beef stores, meat sales, glamping, sheep, leather sales, let buildings. But I think it's really interesting to break down your farm into bits. Now, I should probably break it down further. I should probably break it down into our sort of spring sucklers and our summer sucklers to really look at the difference, because there is a performance difference. So, and then I've got a few blank ones because there's always sort of new things in the pipeline. What I would say with the glamping is that I've kind of stopped the glamping, because in England, we're at peak glamping. If you want to go and stay in something fun, the market is saturated. So I built a glamping pod out of a Bedford cattle lorry that I bought on eBay just before COVID. And it did a couple of really good years sort of in COVID and after COVID. And then the minute people could get out to a weekend away in, I don't know, Madrid or Barcelona, they all buggered off. And it's been hard work since. So I've rented it out to another farmer who's got a much bigger campsite. So I'm constantly looking at these enterprises. Which ones work? Which ones don't? How do we get a new one in? How much time do they require? So we're just going to go quickly through a few of the enterprises. So we've got our own on-farm butchery. So this was part of the collecting yard when we were a dairy farm. And we started off doing our butchery in the old tank room and dairy of the milking parlour, but you had to lift carcasses up steps and through low doors. And I got a bit of shoulder injury, and it was not an enjoyable place to work. So last year, we sort of built a new butchery down the side of the old one. And I got various quotes, and they were a lot of money. So we just did it ourselves. And so I spent 2 years buying stuff secondhand from auctions and then put it together. And so what I wanted to do is make a really nice place to work. And so if you think farming's sort of bad in terms of farmers providing poor facilities for their workers and expectations, I think butchery is a lot worse. And a lot of the butchery places I've seen, it's just not a great place to work, and it's definitely not female friendly. So my daughter is quite keen on helping with the butchery. So I just wanted to make it nice and somewhere so she can push a forequarter out of the fridge and she can help. And also, blokes like good conditions as well. Who'd have thought it? So when our butcher comes to work for us, he really enjoys it. And I think we are in a much better position to attract people to work because it's light, it's airy, it's spacious. We've got reasonable sort of welfare facilities. So we're now all on overhead rails. I bought the rail system off a farmer who spent £250,000 on a butchery, ran it for a year, decided he didn't like it, mothballed it, and then I managed to buy bits and bobs off him at a really good price. So we didn't get a grant on it, we just kind of got on with it. So yeah, it's also really easy to clean, and it's also really versatile, so we can switch it to turkeys, and I'll show you that in a minute. So we sell as many beef as we can direct, and so we use the brand Andy Rumming's beef. We have a monthly cycle, and I don't do any farmers markets. I don't post any out. So time is my sort of number one thing. I've got, as I said, 2 kids and a wife, and they expect a modern standard of time management, I would say. So yes, so making things efficient. So we have people can collect their meat for 2 hours at my farm once a month, and 4 hours at my brother's farm once a month. And so we get everyone to pre-order, and we kind of collate those pre-orders, and then everyone turns up on the Saturday morning at mine or the Sunday morning at my brother's. And we have that quite regimented, and we try and condition our customers into our system. So we send out an email 2 weeks beforehand with, lots of nice pictures, news about what we're up to, really focusing heavily on the environment, on about nutrition, and sort of kind of talking quite honestly about the good things, the bad things. And we get a lot of nice feedback from that. Then a week before our actual collection day, we send what we call a call to action email: buy our beef. Okay, really kind of pushing it hard. And the combination of those 2 emails would mean that we would sell nearly 2 whole carcasses pre-sold, so 75% of 2 carcasses. And that's also good because everyone's paid up front, so you've got the money in the bank before you've actually broken that carcass down. And so that works quite well. We have, at our collection point at my place, we have a bit of spare meat to sell. At my brother's, he's kind of, since COVID, really pushed that. So he now, on that morning, he stocks some local dairy products, some local bakery, and that's growing and growing and growing. And it has to be local. He's really picky about what he supplies, and it's set him apart quite different from... We've got a lot of farm shops around, and they're all a bit cookie cutter, all stocking the same stuff from all over Britain, and they make most of their money selling cups of coffee, actually, rather than food. And we don't do that. So it's quite good. It's not for everyone, but that's working quite well. So yeah, I just want to point out tallow. So I'm really interested in... what can you make out of that? When you look at the bin from the butchery, where should that have gone to? So apart from all your normal carcass meat, all our kidney fat I render into tallow. So just out of interest, there's, so out of 1 body of beef, I'll do 25 jars of tallow, £6 each. So that's 150 quid's worth of little jars of tallow off 1 animal. And then we sell stock bones, big bags of stock bones. Loads of people want to bone broth. I don't want to make that. It's very, very messy. So sell the bones to someone else to make it. We sell loads of marrow bones. There's a big craze for people weaning their babies on marrow bone. I don't know if you come across this. So we sell marrow bone canoes, marrow bone rings, for about £6 a marrow bone. Obviously, we sell dog bones. If we give them away free and put, unpackaged, a few might go. If you vac pack them, put a label on them, people will pay £3, £4 for a knuckle. It's a bit weird, but again, it's trying to present the product in a way that appeals to the customer. We sell loads of offal. We sell, obviously, slices of liver. The smaller the packet, the more we sell. We mince liver, freeze it into little cubes, and we sell liver cubes frozen for about £1.50 each. We'll pack it 4 for £5. And the idea is that you can drop those in if you want to get high density, nutritional density into meals. Just drop a cube of frozen liver into your beef chili. Your family will never know they've eaten the liver. And those are going really well. So it's just and it uses up all the bits of liver that aren't good enough to put in a whole slice. So it's just trying to do all of those things. Our biggest selling new product is enriched mince. So I don't know whether you've seen this online. So it's mince with, let's get this right, 10% liver, 10% heart. again, you're trying to increase the nutritional density of the food for people who wouldn't sit down and eat a slice of liver. I'm really lucky that I love liver and I will sit down and eat it, but apparently lots of people are not like that. So I found out that people, they want to do the right thing. They want to eat high nutritional density diets, but they haven't got a lot of time. They don't like kind of raw liver and things. So if you put it into other products, they go great for it. And my butcher was outraged when I was showing him what it was. He said, that's pet mince. That's pet mince. I said, it's not. He said, so I guess you're charging less money for it. I said, no. So again, it's kind of trying to look at different ways of selling things and talking to your customers. So, looking at the time. So turkeys, just a little bit about turkeys. Now, if you're an aspiring new entrant farmer looking for enterprise on a small area, part-time, turkeys are amazing. So they're only on the farm from sort of June to December. So you can go on holiday or do whatever you do before that. Once they're up and running, you're only looking at like hour a day to feed them, perhaps even less. Those first 3 weeks are really crucial though, because they might be roughy tufty now, but when they're young, they're pretty delicate, and we have to keep them in a kind of shed that should be almost too hot for a human, 30 degrees. And after 3 weeks, we then let them outside, and they're brilliant. So we planted an apple orchard. My brother's in charge of this, and he's really, really good at it. He's found his calling, and he has a very, very low mortality. And he's sort of an attention to detail job. So we started with 40, sold them on Facebook, and we now have I think this year is about 550. The only downside on the turkeys is bird flu. And you've got things what we call housing orders now. So if we get into a bird flu zone and they give us a housing order, we have to keep them inside. So you always have to work out how you're going to house these. And turkeys, particularly being housed when they're a lot bigger, they don't really like it because they're quite pecky. They've got dangerously big claws, and they can be pretty, it's like humans in a crowd or on a tube train in London. It all goes wrong quite quickly. So it is quite nervous having to house them. So we're looking at other nets and other things. But 2 years ago, we did come a cropper. We didn't get bird flu, but the supermarkets lost their premium supply chains. So they lost their bronze turkey supply chains, which are their like money makers. And they lost them in like September, early October. And so they went on a massive campaign to tell everyone to buy a frozen turkey. After years of telling people to buy an expensive fresh turkey. So they went, buy a frozen turkey. And then they even put out messages that, don't order your fresh turkey from someone else, because if they get bird flu, you won't get it. And your family will be disappointed on Christmas Day. And so there was this huge move to buy frozen. And some of our customers, even though they're very loyal, were worried and bought frozen turkey. So we ended up, for the first time ever, with 50 or 60 turkeys left, which when they're worth close to £100 each is a lot of money. And we don't like to waste anything. So Boxing Day was spent jointing turkeys and trying to push them in the freezer. Turkeys used to be low risk, high profit, as long as you don't mind a crazy period before Christmas. Now I would say it's probably high risk, but it's still high profit. And so there's a really good margin on them, and it's great. So we slaughter them all on farm. Me and my brother are licensed slaughter people, and we're actually now wax plucking them, if you want to talk to me afterwards about that. We did that in COVID to reduce labour requirements, and it's a really good little enterprise. And yeah, it fits our skills, and yeah, it's great. And we have 13 people come and help us, and they're all sort of local self-employed people, painters, decorators, all sorts of people, and it's a really good atmosphere. And we have a little band in the afternoon of day 3 to kind of push people through. And yeah, it's turned into quite an event. So there's the same butchery, so we can switch from beef to turkeys in 2 hours. So the rail that we had all the beef carcasses on that leads into the chiller then becomes a pluck-in line. And then when we've done all the plucking, we hang the turkeys for 10 days, and then they come out again, and we do the butchery. We eviscerate them. We take out the guts. And yeah, it's busy, but it works really well. There's a good profit in it. It uses a small area of land, and so yeah, it's great. So yeah, if you're looking at a new enterprise, want to get the foot in the door, the turkeys is good. All right. So, just looking at some of those other enterprises on that little sheet of hexagons. As I said, we get paid to make some of our bales, not all of them. We also do quite a lot where we get the standing hay for nothing. This is on North Meadows. This is a national nature reserve, which is a pretty high designation of nature reserve. And it is what's called a lammas meadow. I don't know if you have them in Northern Ireland. So it's common, right, I have to get this right. So it's common land between Lammas Day, which is the 11th of August, and Candlemas, which is middle of February. And then after that, it's shut up for hay, and then the hay crop is sold to local farmers. Now, there's only 2 of us left that want to take it. And so this is a big area. This is 100 and... I'm going to say about 100 acres, if not more, big flat floodplain. So the flood's up to 1 metre depth in the winter. And just to make it interesting to mow, it's got these marker stones, which are, each one's a scheduled ancient monument. So in theory, if you hit it with your mower, you could end up in prison. But luckily, that's not happened. And so we have got a team of volunteers who know where they are on GPS and put little canes up. And so it's species rich. And it is, so that's what it looks like in April. And so it holds 80% of Britain's snake's head fritillaries in one field. And so you'll see that snake's head fritillary on our meat and our leather goods and various things. So it's a really amazing place. And I feel sort of quite privileged to be able to kind of work there and kind of manage it to some degree. But we work very closely with Natural England, who actually own it. And so this is a really interesting place. So we get the bales off it. And so I was trying to think, what's the potential use for that bale? So it could be as cattle feed, and in some areas off it, we get some really highly palatable cattle feed. So it's not going to be rocket fuel, but the cows will just eat loads of it. And for dry cows indoors in the winter, it's amazing. It keeps the shed pretty dry. It smells great. My kids, they're not going to fork up silage, but this hay, they're more than happy. We use the worst of it as bedding. We sell a little bit occasionally to horsey customers, and we also sell some to a compost facility that make specialist compost. And when they use this stuff, they get a very high amount of protozoa and fungi out of it compared with non-species rich hay. So there's all sorts of interesting angles for it. But also it's a shop front. So I do tours for my customers, some paid, some unpaid, and it's a really important part of our kind of branding. And yeah, so it's trying to look at a piece of land and think, how many incomes can it deliver you? And then this is our sort of leather side of it. So back about, well, to start with, so, a lot of farmers are into welding, perhaps carpentry. And when I was growing up, I wasn't into welding. I was mainly into sort of sewing. So sewing big kites, tents, all sorts of stuff. And so I've always been interested, especially once I started the butchery, what could we do with a hide? Wouldn't it be amazing to get your own cow's hide back and make it into something leather-wise? So I asked my abattoir, I said, can I have the hide back? He said, no, it's not yours. I was like, really? But I thought I'd paid you to slaughter it and give it back to me. He said, well, you have, but you don't get the hide back. It's like, right. And so the unwritten rule in England, anyway, is that the hide belongs to the abattoir. And in those days, the hides were worth like 80, 85 quid each. So our abattoir on a busy day kills about 18 cattle. So that was actually a significant amount of money. That paid all the staff and everything. Anyway, so he wasn't going to let me have my own hide back unless I paid him 85 quid. I'm incredibly tight and wasn't prepared to do that. So we kind of like left it there. And then we had an anthrax outbreak in Wiltshire. As you know, anthrax is really horrible. But what that meant is that no hides from a 40-kilometre zone in Wiltshire were allowed to be exported to China. So suddenly, the 85 quid that he was getting went to zero. And in fact, I think he was going to have to pay to get them incinerated. So suddenly, a little opportunity came for me to get my hides back for nothing. Suddenly, he was more than happy for me to take my hides. So I got my hides back, salted it down, and contacted a tannery in Devon to contract tan it. And at that point, there was probably about 4 or 5 what we call vegetable tanneries left in Britain. So they're people who use tree bark to tan leather rather than chrome and chemicals. And so they agreed to contract tan it for me. So I salted it, took it down there, and they oak bark tanned it, which took a year, which is a long time. They were there. It's worth looking them up online. They're still around. And it's places powered by a water wheel. It's tiny. They've got room for about 3,000 hides a year. And so I took it down there, eventually went and collected it, and realised that it was really interesting, really good leather. So I started by selling some belts, and that's a belt made with it. And found that, so I went for belts because there's only like 2 little bits of stitching in them, and they're not a technical thing to make. And I felt that with it's a leatherworks cross between like sewing and woodwork, and yeah, I felt I could make them. I kind of went through the costs of my time and various things and started selling them. And you can get 30 belts off a beef hide. So I'm only using the bridle butts, the very best bit of the hide. And then, so what do I do with the shoulders? So with the shoulders, and it took a while to kind of get to this stage, I've started sort of making sort of trainers. But what I haven't got enough time to make them, so we run workshops. So you'll see on the picture here, there's a group of people in one of our farm buildings making their own sort of trainers. So we use the front end, so it's a bit like beef butchery. Each bit of that hide has got a particular set of properties that fit with a particular sort of garment. So we use the kind of slightly thinner, slightly stretchier front ends for our sneakers, and then we use the butts for the belts. And if you get it right, the retail value of the workshops and the belts is actually more than the meat, which is amazing, really. So my whole philosophy going forward is not to keep more cows, probably to keep a few less, but to extract as much of the value out of them myself, and sort of climb that ladder. So rather than being at the bottom and moaning about the processor, the slaughterhouse, the livestock market, be a bit further up that ladder or that pyramid, and a bit more in control of my own destiny. So that's the sort of plan. Now, what I would say before you get really excited about the leather side, so the demand is there, no problem at all, for people wanting to do workshops and belts. The tanneries in England are in an absolute state. So we're now down to 2 that can actually do the job. And one of them, so bakers who did original belt leather, they don't want to do contract jobs anymore. So we're left with one in Bristol, which is okay, but is a bit challenging. So I don't have enough leather coming through at all, and so I'm having to kind of throttle back the number of workshops I do to match the supply that I've got, which is tricky. So I'm looking at actually exporting some hides to a little family tannery in Germany, and the German government will actually subsidise me to do that because they really support their Mittelstand which is nuts, isn't it? And they speak better English probably than, better English than me. And then we're also looking at a guy locally who's building a bovine tannery, but that will take him a little while to get that going. So it's tricky. So if you think small abattoir crisis is bad, the small tannery business is really tricky. So very briefly, on the kind of analysis side of it, so we're trying to, with all of our, in order to get profit in an enterprise, you've got to do, I think, 4 things. You've got to look at your income, and you've got to do things to increase that income. You've also got to get your variable costs down because they keep creeping up. And overheads. So it's very easy to do a gross margin and have a lovely gross margin, but then have a whole load of overheads that make the whole job a nightmare. And I think our suckler cows are a bit of a example of that. So great gross margin. When you start looking at the overheads, it makes it much more tricky. And the other thing is mindset. So I think if you want a profitable farm, you have to have the right mindset to do that. And so you want products that people really want. That you want to be selling a product that people literally, they want it. They want to kind of pull it out of your hands. And a product that they'll pay proper money for. And so that's about understanding what is your value proposition. And actually, with a sneaker like this, you're not really selling a sneaker. You're selling an experience. And so there's this whole thing now called the experiential economy. So people they've got their houses full of stuff. They've got loads of stuff. They don't want stuff. They want to spend a lovely day with their daughter or with their sister. Most of my customers are ladies for the workshops. And they value that, and sitting there, getting into the flow, into the zone of sewing away, learning a new skill, being on the farm, they'll pay 150 quid for a day to do that. And that's what they're really buying. So understanding what you're actually selling. And on the meat, a lot of my customers, they're buying it because of the nutritional profile. And then branding, you could do a whole day on branding, but at trying to look at how you sort of spread your message through your sort of images and what you do. And you've got to ask yourself, can you actually deliver the quality and quantity that's needed? And I'm struggling on the leather side. Again, variable costs, trying to be really efficient. And I'm always looking on the cow side, how many calves are we weaning per animals put to the bull? Because it's very easy to get really excited about leather, but if actually you've got loads of barren cows, why are you even doing the leather? So keeping focused and keeping energized about your core business, I think, is really important. We've talked about waste into profit. That's exciting, but that is also pointless if you haven't sold your fillet steaks. You know. So yeah, the overheads, and you know all about this, but it's pulling them apart, and it's trying to stop them creeping up and reducing them. But it's also, I don't know whether you heard this phrase, unfixing them. So when I look at the paid labour on our farms that's in the overhead side of it, actually 80% of it is to do with cows. It's winter work on suckler cows. And so actually that shouldn't be a fixed cost. Even though traditionally and accounting wise it's classed as that, it should come into that sort of gross margin. And so I would really encourage you to look at your fixed costs and unfix them, to put them into the enterprise where they matter, because that may make some of your gross margins look not quite as good, but it's really important. You mustn't put your head in the sand. And so you hear this about, are you stacking enterprises, people say? I guess we are. And what we're trying to do is spread those overheads. So that overhead of that butchery is now being used by the beef, it's being used by the turkeys, and I'm also doing sort of paid days in there where we have a couple of carcasses and we go through them with farmers and look at them. So it's trying to use the resources you have, and you've all got some pretty good resources probably on your farms or that you have access to, and it's how can you spread those overheads. Are we adding complexity? We are, and you've got to be careful that you don't overstretch yourself. And you've got to build systems that other people can then come in and run. And my next thing is some much better software to run my beef sales, so that if I'm ill, I can just let someone else make it happen. And so I'm just kind of smarting over the amount of money they want for this, but I think we'll get there. And then on the mindset, you can plan profit. So you can put a spreadsheet together. It might not go to plan. My glamping did not go to plan. But you can have a go at it. You've got to have a go at doing a cash flow and working out a profit. The attitude to risk, you don't have to take massive risks, but you have to kind of try and spot things that other people aren't doing. And I mean, nowadays with the internet at our fingertips, we've got access to so much information compared with, even 10 years ago, or my dad or my grandfather. It's at our fingertips. Navigating it is tricky, but go and explore something. If you fancy something, go and have a look. Don't blindly follow the crowd, and be resilient. And so, do things that you like. Try and make sure you've got that mental energy, and make decisions at the right time of the day. My family like to have partner meetings in the evening at about 8 o'clock when everyone's knackered, and it's not the best time for making decisions. So work out, if it's 10 o'clock in the morning, it's more important to make big decisions about your business than run around after cows. They can wait. And so I think, trying to do things to look after yourself so that you've got the mental energy to analyze your existing enterprises before you start adding new ones. And, you know what works for you. And so just a few of the toolboxes very rapidly. So I like using this thing called the business model canvas. So it's like a graphical thing that you can put in different things. I do a bit of benchmarking. Profitable Mindset podcast by Charlotte Smith. It's very American. It's very good. I keep a lessons learned diary. So when things go wrong, I write it down. So hopefully I only do it twice and not 3 times. And then 2 really good books. Holistic Management is great. And then the best one I've read recently was Will Harris, Bold Return to Giving a Damn, which is amazing. And if you listen to the podcast, you hear his Georgian accent. And that is really good. He's kind of cross between activist, a good old boy with a massive shotgun, and a sort of regenerative farmer who's doing a lot of stuff about inclusion and diversity. So he's brilliant. So that's me. We've left a little bit of time for questions. If you've got any questions at all, grab me during the day at any time between now and midnight. And if there's any questions, go from there. Yes. Thank you.
Do you account each of your enterprises separately? I see you use Xero. I use it as well.
Yeah, so we do, but we need to. So we only use a tiny bit of Xero. And so my New Year's resolution for this year, which has taken a while to do, is to really put some time into Xero, because knowing your figures is just so important. No one wants to be a busy fool, and Xero is really powerful. And a lot of accountants are pushing it, but yes, so we each enterprise has got a cost code, and we try and split. So if the butcher's bill comes in, I want to split his time, some of it into lambs and some of it into beef. And at the moment, my father's still doing the bookkeeping, and he doesn't always do that. So it's an ongoing process. But we're trying to do that. Yeah. No, we don't. So we are a partnership. Everything is owned by us. We don't have any non-family partners. We're probably not that good at cooperating financially with other people. I think 2 areas where I need to learn quite a lot is staff management, and probably looking at joint venture things. And I don't have much experience of both. So that's where we are. Yep.
I'm in but have come. I'm interested in moving into it. and have run other businesses, so I'm familiar with profit margins and those sort of things. What are your profit margins, just so I can compare them with other businesses I've run in the past?
Yeah, so the turkeys, if everything's working, there's a sort of 50% gross margin on the turkeys. On the meat sales, we're looking, on each beef carcass, the target is, well, at the moment, it's about £1,100 gross margin on a beef carcass. So that's after putting in the price of the live animal and all of the bits and bobs. That margin is coming under a bit of pressure because, as you all know, the live prices. Someone yesterday showed me some of the Irish live store prices, which is just insane. So I'll ignore those. But yeah, so our store prices are also going really high, and I put my retail meat prices up twice this year. And so that £1,000 margin is under a lot of stress at the moment, and with inflation, that margin needs to be even more next year if I want to maintain it. I also want to grow, but I do not want to have thin margins and being on a treadmill. That's not what I want to do. So those margins are good. The margins on the suckler cows are challenging. Yeah. On the forage and other things, again, because we're being paid to do that and we're trying to use our machinery over lots of things, that works. So yeah, so overall we are a profitable business, but we're not profitable enough that I can draw. I mean, for what I do and the responsibility and the risk I manage, I would like to be drawing £3,000 a month. No chance. I mean, there are 6 of us in the business, which is 4 older generation. But I want to get to a stage where I can draw a proper amount. I've got a daughter who wants to be a vet, which 5-year course, it's a huge demand. So some aspects of it are more profitable than others, but there's lots of work we can do to improve it. Yeah. Okay. Right. Yep. Yep.
Or fresh meat?
We try and sell as much fresh as possible. So, like next week, we're butchering Wednesday, Thursday, make mince and burgers Friday. Hopefully, 75% of it will be collected fresh Saturday. So to really, having your freezers full of your profit, I find that sort of, it kind of worries me. So we always have a little bit of frozen in between, but most of it we're trying to do fresh out the door. And that works quite well, yeah. No. So we get everything collected from the farm, yeah. I might do 1 mail order box a month, but no, the mail order business in England is massively competitive, and I don't really like competition much, so I'm not prepared to do that, yeah. Right.
Can I just ask, for your customer education and to get people used to buying meat from the farm, were there any messages that were particularly effective?
Yeah, so I think most of your communication shouldn't really be about selling. So yeah, talk to people about your farm, what you're doing day to day, the environment, food, and then at the bottom put the link to the website. And I think having a website so that people can order online is very, very important. And trying to funnel people into one place. You don't want people trying to order. I mean, people do. I get orders on Facebook Messenger, Twitter, WhatsApp. They tell my mother. So you've got to kind of try and corral it. But yeah, so I think, talk about you and your life, which you may or may not be comfortable in doing, but that works. People like hearing about people. And go pretty softly. And then when you have got it to sell, go quite hard. But email newsletters is where I get most of my business from. MailChimp, it's free. Just start putting out your newsletters, get your family and friends on board, and just go from there. So I've got 450 subscribers, and that in a good month can clear 2 carcasses. Yeah. Right. Okay, I'll leave it there. Thank you very much.